Hello, welcome back to my channel, and this is a bonus video for those people following my Michael Powell retrospective. Now, I started this retrospective with The Edge of the World, which was Powell's first big independent feature that he made in the late 1930s. But before that, Powell had quite an apprenticeship. He'd worked with Rex Ingram, the American actor and director, in France, and then when he came back to England at the start of the 1930s, he served an apprenticeship making what were called Quota Quickies. Now, these were films that came about because the British, rather like many governments in Europe, to sort of defeat the sort of dominance of Hollywood and American material, they'd made a law that cinemas had to show so much percentage of homemade product of British movies. And this had led to a need for British movies, quick, cheap British movies, often kind of B movies, support features for the main films. And they were called Quota Quickies. And they were made very quickly and very cheaply. Often, actually, American producers worked with British producers to create films that went with their product. So really, it didn't really work in promoting British films and filmmakers, really, because it was really serving to promote American films. But nevertheless, it gave an apprenticeship to many filmmakers and craftsmen and actors. And Powell took advantage of this, and he made many, many Quota Quickies. He'd made quite a lot of films before he made The Edge of the World. Now, previously, I hadn't seen these films, but I recently went to Il Cinema Ritrovato in Bologna, which is a festival of rediscovered and restored films, and they showed a whole season of these Quota Quickies by Michael Powell, and they got quite good crowds. People enjoyed them. And I went to see quite a few of them, and it was very interesting to watch them. Now look, these things are cheap, they were made in very quick time, and they're not going to win any Oscars. They are not major works of art. Let's just say that right from the beginning. But if you're a Powell fan like me, they're kind of fascinating. They're fascinating because even in this quick, cheap industry, Powell was already becoming present as a filmmaker. You can see this most in his work with actors. He was very good with actors from a very early stage. But also, you start to see his concerns coming forward as a director. The best example to look at is probably the best known of these Quota Quickies. It's a film called The Phantom Light. And it's set in a remote part of Wales. And immediately, Powell treats this Welsh community just as he will treat the communities of The Edge of the World and I Know Where I'm Going in Scotland, as this kind of quaint sort of, going back to older, simpler times away from the urban English world. So that's already there in The Phantom Light. And his quirky sense of humour comes through. The main character of this film, based on a play, is played by Gordon Harker, a kind of Cockney comedian. In any other film, he'd be the light relief. In this film, he comes forward, and he's actually the main character, which gives the film a really interesting quality, I think. And he's the new lighthouse keeper at this lighthouse, where rum things have been going on. One of the lighthouse keepers has disappeared, and the other one has gone mad with fear, and now he's got to take it over. And on his way to this lighthouse, he meets this chipper girl who claims to be a member of this psychic society investigating ghostly phenomena, and a rather odd chap who claims to be a journalist. We will find out later that they're nothing of the kind. No one is quite who they appear to be in this story. Anyway, we go to the lighthouse, there's odd goings on. You can see where the plot is going from a mile off. The twist is not really a twist, you know where it's going. Apparently, the light of the lighthouse goes out, and a phantom light appears on the cliffs. What could that be? So it's not going to test your brain cells. But right from the beginning, we can see that these actors are enjoying working with Powell. They've got great timing and great rapport. There's that sense of the supernatural and the special life of these remote communities. That's already there, as it will be in Powell's later work. And also the cheekiness of Powell. So the lead actress spends almost her entire time in these kind of hot pants and high heels, in this kind of cape around a lighthouse. It's very unbelievable. She's given these kind of, old sailor's trousers to wear, so she just cuts them to make them into shorts. And she spends half the time running around in these shorts with high heels on. very improbable. So it's very cheeky, it's very silly, and it's quite good fun. Some of the Powell movies in this Quota Quickies, they're often comedies and sort of romantic comedies, often rather odd. I mean, I'm not one of these people who worries about old social mores or gets triggered, but one of them was The Love Test. And this is this story about it's set in a chemicals firm. One of the things I like about these Quota Quickies is they show aspects of British life which modern films just don't bother with. The whole film is set in a chemistry lab, and it's about people trying to find an answer to who, in those days, nitrate film, which most films were made on, it was very flammable and it used to keep burning down cinemas. And the plot of the film is that they're trying to find out a, a solution to this. They're trying to find a nitrate film that won't burn. And in this lab, a woman gets promoted to be the head lab technician, and the men don't like it. So they conspire together to bring her down. And the way that they do this is they try to make her fall in love so that she won't concentrate on the business of her chemistry and will instead concentrate on her man. And of course, the man that they decide on falls in love with her for real and helps her find the solution to the problem. It's a rather mean-spirited comedy, actually. Rather makes you feel rather uncomfortable, even for its time, I think. And a lot of the comedies, they play on these rather crappy motifs, crappy ideas. But you can see, Powell's ability, his timing, his use of space, his work with actors. A young Googie Withers turns up in The Love Test as a sort of flirtatious secretary, and you can already see her potential. And you can see these actors coming into Powell's orbit. One of them is Leslie Banks, who was a well-known theatre actor in England at the time. He'd also done some work in Hollywood, and he would later appear in Powell and Pressburger's films. And he is the lead actor in my favourite of these Quota Quickies that I've seen, a wonderful film called Red Ensign. Red Ensign is a classic piece of British filmmaking. It was made in 1934, and it's about British shipbuilding. My God, British shipbuilding. It's worse for wear, Ships are not being built, and other countries, other Johnny foreigners are taking us over. We've got to do something about it. And this whole film is about improving the British shipbuilding industry. God, it's exciting. Anyway, Leslie Banks plays this guy, Charles Barr, and he's got an idea. He's designed a brilliant new ship, and we've got to start making it. But the people who run the company say, no, we can't do it. We haven't got the money. And he says, God damn it, we should make it anyway. Don't you realise that this is the kind of thing that needs to animate the British shipbuilding industry? We need to make these new ships, whatever the cost. And this is kind of like Powell saying to the British film industry, you boring old producers with your old ways, you need to let the young kids take over and make exciting movies. So this rather improbable storyline where this guy decides to make 20 ships, 20 brand new ships at skyrocket prices to animate the British shipbuilding industry. It's Powell's kind of sly way of having a dig at the rather boring pedestrian producers in the British film industry. It's great sort of patriotic, tub-thumping stuff, and Leslie Banks really goes for it. He's partnered with an American actress called Carol Goodner, who's rather good in it, actually, and rather sophisticated. Powell thought that she was one of his best discoveries during his Quota Quickies era. It's not going to win any awards, it's not a masterpiece, but it's good fun. And again, it gives you an insight into British culture at the time in a kind of film that is simply not made anymore and would never be made anymore. So, if you're interested in Michael Powell, check these films out. The BFI have recently announced that they're going to be doing a huge Michael Powell season in the autumn, in September and October. And I think they've done some restored prints of these Quota Quickies, so check them out. They're well worth discovering. As always, if you like my content, please like and subscribe.